Welcome back to week 3, and want to talk today about the mind. So no matter how diverse of people I encounter, I have come to the conclusion, I've learned that we all have a mind that works the same way, and I get to interact with the mind on a daily basis in my job as a psychiatrist. So I take the abstract things like depression, anxiety, love, anger, or focus, and I translate them into something concrete like neuronal networks, neurotransmitters, or biochemistry. And I intervene in a meaningful way. But one of the things I want to show you is how to interact with the mind. So that will be our focus. Imagine for a moment that you are a single person and you just got a text from someone that you like. And this text says, hey, I'd love to pick up this conversation in person. How about we keep talking over dinner or a drink? Now, this text that was sent from someone's phone is just information. It's a non-physical entity. It's something that was sent from a phone to a satellite, back down to a transmitter, and to your phone, which it was encoded into English. But the information itself was a non-physical entity that impacted, that influenced your brain. Your brain made sense of that information and translated into a physical response. Your heart might have raced, or your blood pressure might have increased, and you might have felt excitement or euphoria. Well, that is depending on who that text is from. If that's someone that you didn't like, then it might have a different response. But the point is that this is a non-physical entity of information interacting with your mind. And so we have a first-hand experience of the mind because we have imagination, we have our own experience of reality all around us. And then there's the back end of the matter and mechanisms and movement of matter within these systems. And so that is the interplay I want to discuss. We have a brain, we have the physical material matter, and then we have a mind. That's the non-physical, non-material matter, analogous to that information that I was discussing earlier on the text message. So this is the mental psychological aspect. It could be called soul or mind, nephesh in Hebrew, suka in Greek, in the New Testament. It is ourselves. It is who we really are, what animates our brain and body. It's the man or woman behind the mask, controlling the mask. In neuroscience, we call it consciousness or awareness, which is an easier word to say. Largely, you experience it as the internal dialogue within your mind and the resulting emotional expressions. Now, our body, our brain and our body are the things that carry out these expressions of the mind. So the mind has feelings, desires, beliefs, ideas, thoughts, choices, and behaviors. These are the states that the mind exists in, and there's 5 states. Like water can exist in 3 different states, solid, liquid, gas, the mind exists in 5 different states: beliefs, thoughts and ideas, sensations, desires, and then choices, acts of will, or behaviors. So uniquely as humans, we can think about our thoughts. Dogs, on the other hand, they do not even recognize themselves in the mirror. So the mind animates or drives the brain like you would drive a car. So you drive your mind so it takes the brain where you want it to go rather than the brain taking you where to go. Now, a driver cannot drive a broken car. The mind cannot express itself through a broken brain. So this is demonstrated in a stroke or dementia or tumors or brain trauma. When the brain is broken, you cannot express or maneuver in the physical space, time, or world that your mind desires. So previously to a stroke, if I said, raise my right arm would raise. I would do the same thing with my mind after the brain was broken from the stroke and the right arm would not raise. Now, naturalists or materialists say that our consciousness, our awareness, our mind, quotation fingers, just comes from the brain matter. That if you could arrange all the molecules in place in a single instant, that poof, magically, consciousness or awareness would spontaneously appear. This is the mindset of the naturalist, of the materialist, of the atheist. So there is a parallel idea of reductionism. And so I would describe it like this. Imagine if the brain was like a car and the sum total of the car was transportation. If I assemble all the pieces together perfectly, poof, I have transportation. I have a working car that gives me transportation. Now, likewise, if I can assemble all the molecules of the brain together, says the atheist, naturalist, materialist, poof, I have consciousness. I have awareness, a mind. This is the concept of reductionism. Except it doesn't work for the mind. It's not true. The states of mind are not the sum total of the brain like transportation is for a car. If we take away the engine from a car, there is no transportation. But if we take away half of a brain, there still exists beliefs, thoughts, will, choice, behaviors, perspectives. They're intact. We see the immutable presence of a non-physical entity, the presence of a mind. Consider split brain syndrome. So the septum pellucidum, pictured here, connects the two hemispheres of the brain. And in cases of intractable seizures, where they can't get control of seizures from medication, there sometimes is an indication for a septum pellucidotomy. And this is to reduce the effects of epilepsy on the brain. And it results in a split brain syndrome where, despite these two hemispheres having perception, there is a single unified consciousness. A single unified consciousness. There's a single unified awareness, even though the two hemispheres are not talking to one another. So your mind is your identity. It's different from the brain. It's the only thing in the universe, in the entire universe, that you own. You don't even own your body because it's deteriorating. You don't own your brain. It's deteriorating. Your brain is rebuilt molecule by molecule with the substances and food that you take in and the energy metabolism that it incurs. It's always changing, but the mind remains constant. It can grow, it can develop, but it remains who you are. So how can we further prove this identity of you beyond the physical matter of your brain? Well, Sam Parnia set out to demonstrate this, this being of the mind that exists beyond death. So he studied patients after reviewing records of their cardiac arrest, their medical records, making certain that they did indeed have a cardiac arrest, and 46% of them reported memories after death. 9% of them were able to come back and report to him near-death experiences. This is published in the Journal of Resuscitation, December 2014, volume 85, issue 12, pages 1799 to 1805, if you want to check it out. Also, I would point you to John Burke's book, Imagine Heaven, where he did a very careful, in-depth research of near-death experiences. In this, he found that multicultural people have similar experiences, no matter their age, their experience, their education. In fact, the blind people from birth, in some cases, saw things that were verified. Children, there's one child who described a shoe on the roof of a hospital as he left his body. And hospital staff did verify that that shoe was there. The resuscitation that were described, the resuscitation efforts that were described, were confirmed by a cardiologist. This cardiologist, unbelieving at first, said he could teach a resuscitation to fellow cardiologists from the exact description of these patients who had cardiac arrest, and later described their resuscitation efforts. So what we see through what we experience, everything you're looking at is not fully represented when we look at the brain neurons firing. The full physical representation of visual consciousness is not represented in brain mapping. We've mapped the visual system. We've mapped the entire visual system of the brain. But yet visual consciousness cannot be mapped. It doesn't exist on the physical location of the brain. And how about this? The mind, when you recruit it, results in better recovery than without the mind by electrical stimulation only. So the mind determines to lift weights, running in the morning, to keep going. It's the mind that pushes us to keep going and change our physical body. So shocking the brain can cause you to experience colors or move a limb or even evoke a memory or emotion, but we cannot shock the brain into a behavior, into a choice, into a belief. Wilder Penfield, a neurosurgeon, explored this and the scientific basis for the existence of a human soul. First, starting his career as a neurosurgeon, as an atheist, he started looking into this and realized there's something other in these patients that exists beyond their physical brain, because he was able to do brain surgery while they're awake. He was able to communicate with them while they're awake and probe and stimulate these different areas of the brain. And he came to the overwhelming conclusion that something exists beyond the physical material matter that he was interacting with or could intervene. Ideas like this non-physical entity can be explored by Jeffrey Schwartz's book, You Are Not Your Brain. And in it specifically, he talks about the mind, the non-physical entity that can change the physical entity, the biomass of your brain and body for that matter. Your mind determines that you want to get healthy, and so you lift weights and you actually change your body. In the same way, you can change your brain with the mind. Now, here's another great proof. Aesthetics, The Sunset, a beautiful song that brings you to tears. These influences on our emotion are universally seen throughout cultures and ages. Even an infant shows the impact. It's difficult to conceive such an impactful cue with no corresponding biological function. So animals do not notice sunsets or connect to the transcendent qualities of the environment in the same way. But perhaps the best example of the mind being separate from the brain is identical twins. See, these are two exact genetic information that were developed in the same, sometimes the same embryonic sac, the same womb, the same mother, same parents, same food for the most part. Usually they're raised together by the same parents and have the same upbringing. Yet, identical twins, even though they have the same genes and the same environment, have different brain states, have different mind states. They have different beliefs, thoughts, viewpoints, opinions, and behaviors. They have different minds, even though their genes determined the same brain.